Friends, it's my great pleasure to invite you all for this 44th JP Memorial Lecture to be delivered by Mr. Akar Patel. Before I come to introduce Mr. Akar Patel, a few words in terms of why 23rd March and why the JP Memorial Lecture on this day would be very important. It was on this day, in 1977, that Indira Gandhi revoked the emergency and declared the decision to hold general elections. Okay. The declaration of revocation of emergency itself was a consequence of millions of young people who heeded Jayaprakash Narayan's call of total revolution and came out on the streets opposing Indira Gandhi. The situation we are living in today is not very different from what it was. In fact, it's much more dangerous today than it was at that time. But it was on that day that the consequence of a wide-scale movement that JP had started way back in 1974 and actually earlier in 1972 itself, when he challenged the dictatorial regime of Indira Gandhi and the type of politics that it represented, which finally pushed the government to withdraw emergency. So it is on this day that we celebrate it as Jayaprakash Narayan Day in recognition of the work that he has done, and we in the pUCL have been holding memorial lectures in the name of JP on this day. By and large, we request speakers who we invite to come on that day so that that day becomes important. It's like 26th January, you don't shift 26th January or 15th August. We generally try not to shift it. There have been few occasions in the last few years in which sometimes the dates have changed for a variety of reasons, including when the speakers fell ill or some other national event occurred. Luckily, this time 23rd happens to be on a Saturday, therefore not being very difficult for both the speaker and for people to attend. And I would like to, on behalf of the National pUCL, thank Mr. Chandrasekhar and the Kerala State Unit, which has revived recently, for very readily accepting to host the 44th JP Memorial Lecture this year in Ernakulam or Cochin. We've had a host of very, very eminent people who have delivered the lectures in previous times. We had Mr. Gopal Krishna Gandhi delivering the lecture about 6 years back in Bangalore. We've had Bhavar Meghvanshi, a very well-known Dalit writer, activist, poet, who delivered the lecture last year in Allahabad. We had Anuradha Basin, the editor of Kashmir Times, a great fighter for human rights from Kashmir, who had delivered the lecture some years back. We had also Michael Sward, Israeli lawyer, human rights activist of Jewish origin, whose ancestors came from Poland, who was working as a lawyer, human rights lawyer in Israel, taking up the issues of Palestinian people, both the recognized Palestinian people and the unrecognized Palestinian people. I'm making this distinction because there are two sets of Palestinian Arabs who are there. Those who are recognized and living in Israel and those who are living in Gaza and the West Bank. Michael Sward has been, though being a Jew, he's been amongst the foremost lawyers taking up this issue and fighting it. We had him deliver the lecture 2 years back. Okay. It was a very rousing lecture. I would invite many of you, the younger people, to please go to the pUCL website, or we can make it available through the pUCL Kerala unit. Okay. So we have had people like Pratap Banu Mehta, who has been delivered into the last 10 years. Earlier lecture was delivered by Justice Tarkunde, by Mr. Kannabiran, by Justice Sudarshan Reddy, by Professor Rajni Kothari, some of the biggest thinkers, doers, and political persons in India. So it is in this long line of people who have delivered very, very visionary speeches that when we were discussing about who we should invite for this lecture, that we thought of Akar. And I would like to, on behalf of all of you, say thanks to Akar for accepting this. There's a little bit of history behind why we decided to choose Akar and for this lecture. Being in Kerala, okay, and being on the occasion of just before the 2024 elections, we asked us a question: what is it that we would like the lecture to focus on? Of course, the lecture topic is chosen by the lecture person who's delivering, but we generally gave them a certain idea about what it is that we would like to speak. And we said that irrespective of whether BJP is going to come back to power or not come back to power, though it doesn't look like this could be a major change in that sense, even if they come back to power with a smaller number, what worried us is not whether the elections is going to end up in result A or result B. What is worrying us is the fact that there's a poison of hatred, the poison of division, the poison of an anti-democratic spirit, which many people, especially in educated sections that we all come from, have embraced. What does that mean to us? How do we, as part of the larger pUCL family, and this lecture is open not only for pUCL members, but other people also, how do, as concerned citizens who are working within the framework of the Constitution, what should we be working on in the next 3 years, 5 years? 10 years seems to be very far away. At least in the next 3 years, what should we be doing to safeguard democracy, to safeguard the Constitution, to safeguard the rights that we have got, that has been hard earned? Very few of us really know the type of debates that went in the Constituent Assembly. So today when there's a PIL saying the word secularism should be removed from the Indian Constitution, and that is being taken up for hearing. It's going to come up now. It's just a matter of luck that it has not come. It was to come up about 2 weeks back. It's coming up now at any point in time. And we were asking around people saying, do we know the history of secularism? There's so many lawyers here, how many lawyers know why this word secularism was left out in the Indian Constitution at the time of the Constitution making? Sadly, many of us do not know the history. We don't go back to those Constituent Assembly debates. This debate on whether you should use the word socialism or you should put the word secularism in the Indian Constitution was debated for over 3 to 4 months. And the Constitution makers had a deliberate idea as to what should be there in the preamble of the Indian Constitution. And they said that at the time of independence, the Constituent Assembly was set up in 1946, when India had not been partitioned. 47 partition takes place, and the killings that took place all across the border. And the choice was very clear, and the choice was, should India be a Hindu Rashtra, because majority of people are Hindus, or should it be something else? And not unanimous, but the major decision that was taken place at that time is no. We will not become a Hindu Rashtra. We believe in secularism. Now, the reason I'm pointing out is that the next part of the debate took place. This took place over 2 years, not 1 day, 2 days. A huge debate took place in the Constituent Assembly. And the same questions that are being raised today, we are all subject to many of these debates that are coming up in YouTube. That this word secularism owes its origin to Western secularism. I invite people here, please go back to our history. Go back to our history, because our Constitution makers debated, is the notion, one minute please. Our National Secretary, he's come from Coimbatore for this meeting. And the Constituent makers discussed and said, no, the concept of secularism as we are discussing is not the word secularism which is coming from Western Europe or which came up in England. Our notion of secularism is different. And they went on to discuss and debate about it. And they said that this secularism which we are putting into our Constitution is not the secularism of the West. Now, we do not know, we do not go back to this heritage of this debate. It's very important in today's debate that we are able to counter false ideology, false politics, the false notion of what our Constitution is with the true fact of what happened. It is in this context that when we were looking into it, Akar is an old friend of ours in the previous year, that we felt that Akar would be the right person to invite to give this talk. We needed to go back to some of those old things and in a visionary way. Because it's very easy today for many of us to become cynical. We had a discussion here a little while back. Youngsters are not coming. Youngsters are not interested in this. A lot of youngsters here, much more than normal, I'm seeing here. So I'd like to congratulate the pUCL Calicut Cochin unit. You've got a lot more youngsters here. But this very innate thing in human rights circles to become pessimistic, to become cynical, no change can take place. But I think change is taking place. We need to be optimistic. They can take away anything from us, but they should never be able to take our sense of idealism. But that idealism is what the Constitution makers gave us. Can you imagine in 1949, when the Constitution was written, when they gave adult franchise to people? who are not educated, there was a discussion. You can't trust illiterate people to vote. And our constitution maker said, no, in a future India, they will learn to become mature. How do you become mature unless you give them the right and you trust them with the right? This word of trust, that you trust in the wisdom of the people. I think these are the type of values that embodied the constitution, not just the words that you read in the preamble, but the history and the spirit which went behind it. It is in this context that we then said, we will ask Akar to talk. To introduce Akar Patel to you all formally, Akar is from Gujarat. He was in Surat. He is a journalist, author, activist. Some of his books are outside, so those of you who may want to pick it up. Okay. He was with several things. He is right now chair of the Amnesty India board in India. He has written a number of books, but before he became well known as a book writer, he also worked in several publications. He was the editor-in-chief in Surat of Divya Bhaskar, a Gujarati daily from there. He was also the deputy editor of Deccan Chronicle and an editor-in-chief of Midday Multimedia. He's very famous for his books, Our Hindu Rashtra, which talks about majoritarianism, which was published in 2020. The Price of the Modi Years, 2021. It's a very, very important book where he looks into the larger economics of what the Modi years have represented. And then, of course, there's several other books that he has come out with. Beyond all this, one quality of Akar, which I think I would like to bring to this forum, is the fact that Akar is not somebody who's just a writer. He is not somebody who just comes and gives a bhashan in a hall. He's a man who walks the talk. As I would like to say it, he puts his foot where his mouth is. Okay? He is not somebody to run away from a fight. Okay? And he is not afraid to take risks. And let me tell you that he has taken risks for his conscience. And he was head of the Amnesty India, and you know Amnesty is famous for its Prisoners of Conscience program. That's how it got formed. So in a way, he is a prisoner of his conscience, and he didn't let go of the conscience. Okay? He was stopped twice when he was wanting to leave India, when he was invited to go and give a lecture in US universities. He was stopped just as he was about to catch his flight to the US. And it was twice, not once. He fought it, he went to the court gave an order. The government of India, obviously, you know how our government of India now is. This all happened in the last few years. They said the court can give anything, but we are not bound by the court. They stopped him a second time. He filed yet another case, and he wanted compensation to be given from the officer the investigating officer who was involved with that. And he didn't wait for it. The case is, I think, still going on. It's over. But he didn't go on. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is also to point out to the fact that it's very easy at this point in time to say, why get into all this trouble, leave it and go. But he's one person who said no. Okay, I don't go look out for a fight, but if a fight is coming my way, I'm not going to run away from it. So, ladies and gentlemen, Akar, okay, he's a fighter, he's a visionary, and he's a person, in a way, he's a chronicler of the last 10 years. In fact, his writings are actually a chronicle. Okay, like Gabriel Marquez talked about chronicles of a death foretold. He's in a way a chronicler of what is coming. So let's hear from the chronicler himself, Akar.